Hello and welcome to Movies and Tea, and I'm your host as always, Edward Jones, and joining me of course is my co-host Miss Kim Loeb.
Hello.
Tonight we continue our season-long look at the history of the creature feature, as tonight we move into the 80s with Wild Beasts from Italy, directed by Franco E. Prosperi. A director whose name might not initially jump out to you, depending on how much exploitation cinema you watch, but he was responsible for a couple of Mondo movies. He also did Goodbye Uncle Tom, which is just a horrible, sleazy movie about plantations and with a film crew going back in time to the plantations, and it's just absolutely horrible. This film, though, was marked the end of his career as a director, and for myself is a pretty wild, fun time, which I'm really looking forward to discussing tonight. Kim, for yourself, I believe this is your first taste of Italian cinema as well.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Italian cinema, I was trying to think whether I had seen anything.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I do watch a lot of weird stuff from different places because of all the film festivals and stuff.
Of course.
But I think Italy is actually that place that I've never actually watched anything from. So this was a completely different type of experience for me, I guess. But, I mean, it is in English. It is, like, English dubbed. So, you know, it wasn't a hard time to watch, which is pretty good. Overall, I don't mind reading subtitles or anything, you know. But when it's in a language I can understand, it's nice, especially when it's meant to be English dubbed.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Italian cinema is they overdub everything, and especially in exploitation cinema, and you often hear actors that have been over there, they often say that they'll be trying to act, and you've got the production team hammering and putting up scenery and stuff, and they're like, guys, shouldn't we have quiet on set? It's like, no, we're just gonna overdub this later, so it doesn't really matter what you say now, because we'll just correct it later. But no, Italian cinema is really kind of interesting because obviously it's not only one of the first countries that really embraced the full-length feature, it's influenced cinema as a whole, really. In particular, a lot of art cinema has come from Italy. We've had directors like Bertolucci, and we've also had films like 8.5, and then you have the exploitation movies of the 70s into the 80s, where you've got the exploitation masters like Fulci, Dario Argento, De Rogato, these guys who were going out and making some of the most insane zombie movies and cannibal movies, and you had the Polisi movies and giallo movies. So there's just a whole breadth of cinema that comes from Italy. It was never just one particular movement that came out of there, and certainly we could just do a whole season just looking at the history of Italian cinema, because there's just so many subgenres that came from it. As I said, we had the zombie movies of Fulci, for example. We can also look at the spaghetti westerns, which were also so key to this history of Italian cinema. But with Wild Beasts, it once again ups the ante in the same way that you had directors like Fulci up in the zombie sort of ante when they saw the movies by George R. Romero's Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead, and they were going off and making zombie and just really saying, well, how can we really sort of make this even more out there and disgustingly gory? And we had things such as zombie or zombie flesh eaters, as it's known here in the UK, where you got the splinter wood in the eye and all that sort of fun stuff. And with Wild Beasts, it ups the ante for the creature feature genre as well, because we're no longer just looking at one animal as we've seen so far in our season with birds and spiders and giant ass crocodiles. As tonight we get a whole zoo of wild animals after PCP gets into the local water supply in a northern European city, as the opening credit tells us. But Kim, you pointed out it was Frankfurt.
It is. There's a big sign. It's just because there's a few twigs in front of it. Doesn't in front of the ANFU type of thing. You know, it's not you can't notice it's Frankfurt.
I can't say it's a real postcard image to present in the city, because we open with the sewage works, and there's needles and stuff on the subway, and it's God, where the hell is this? So, basically the PCP gets into the water supply for the zoo, sending all the animals mad, and they all break out and start raking havoc on the city. And it's down to Antonio Di Leo as Rupert Bennett to save the day and get these animals back under control. So, if you like movies featuring more than one animal going rogue, then this is probably going to be the movie for you. But opening thoughts on this one, what did you think of your first taste of Italian exploitation cinema?
I don't know. I mean, I really like Wild Beasts. I think that out of all of the films we've seen so far in terms of creature feature, it's the one that I feel is more aligned with what we're more used to now, because it is really intense though, because they start off right away not only showing like the gritty sewers and like all of the needles and all that stuff, but it also has like, you start off right away, and I remembered I was like sitting down to have breakfast because I like watching horror movies in the morning. Excuse me. So I was sitting down for breakfast, and I realized it was a bad idea when the scene turned to the zoo and they were feeding these like donkey parts.
Oh God, yes, I forgot that.
Donkey insides to all the animals, right? Like the lions and the tigers and all that stuff. And I was just watching that, and that was so disgusting. And I was eating, and I was like, I really don't want to eat right now, but I really need to. Because I need to, you know. And then I was like, I was just sitting there watching this, and I'm like, what is going on? When is this scene going to end?
Yeah, you're watching like some donkey's head being split with a machete, aren't you? So it's like...
Yeah, and then basically, that's kind of a really good taste of what the film is you're going to expect. It's going to be very bloody. It's going to have a lot of, you know, they're not scared to make things very, I guess, very brutal in that sense. Because, you know, there are a lot of really disturbing scenes as the film goes along. But I guess it's kind of expected because these animals are all going crazy. And it's, you know, like, I mean, I've seen animals go crazy before in, like, more modern stuff. Like that TV series. I forgot the name.
Oh, Zoo?
Yes, Zoo. Yeah. And I mean, like, that series was also, you know, the same type of concept where it wasn't like, you know, PCP in the water, obviously. But it was also, like, a zoo of animals that all the animals in the world have gone crazy, basically. And they're you know, redominating the earth, where this one is more contained, you know, like they kind of, by the end of the film, you know, there's a solution kind of to what's going on. There's kind of like, you feel like it's settled down type of thing, obviously. I just wonder if they were planning to do like a sequel for this, you know, that was like my ending thoughts. But might as well get that in there right now.
Yeah, it certainly just ends, doesn't it? It's sort of like almost like,
it's like, hey, let's throw in a twist, but we'll end it right now.
It is. Yeah. It's one of those movies where you can almost tell where the money for the production ran out. The other good one, I'm afraid, this is Robot Jocks, which is by Stuart Gordon, where they have the big climactic robot fight and they go into space and ends with two guys hitting each other with poles before it just ends. It's like, oh, guess the money ran out then. But, yeah, this one's interesting because it's all live animals, which is always an interesting approach to put, you know, live actors with live animals. There's a couple of shots with, like, puppets, but there's no CGI in this movie, which, when we get into this, is just all the more wilder. And we start off, you know, pretty timid. I mean, obviously we got the feeling that things are going slightly astray at the zoo as the animals are getting a bit stressed, and we see that, and then suddenly we've got the rats in the sewer are going crazy and attacking this couple in their car who just for some reason are deciding to have sex on the street, apparently. So we get,
well, I mean, you'd have to assume that they're in some type of back alley. I mean, that's the only assumption you can make, right? Because, you know, it's the only way that would make sense. I don't know. I mean, unless, you know, that it's okay to do it.
It's Europe, though. A lot more liberal.
I don't know. I mean, you're in Europe, so you probably have a better idea.
No, we're not. If we're in side part Europe, Britain's not as. It's not like we're in like Amsterdam or France or those bits where they don't care about nudity and stuff. We're a little more prudish when it comes to these things. But yeah, this couple we see going at it, and they're apparently so caught up in their coupling that they don't realize there are just hundreds upon hundreds of rats crawling all over the car. These rats were actually had to be painted black because the rats they had were white.
And then the poor cat that gets caught in it.
Yeah, I'm gonna warn it ahead. There is some animal cruelty in this, which unfortunately is something that we did see a fair bit of in this sort of period. I mean, you saw quite a lot of it in like the cannibal movies, so things like Cannibal Holocaust and Cannibal Ferox, and it never adds anything to the movie when you have animal cruelty like this. And I believe the cat was fine. So the rats, however, we can say probably weren't fine because we see them get flamethrowered. Which, again, if you're not used to this sort of cinema, it's a little bit of an eye-opening experience. I mean, it was eye-opening for myself first time I saw this, to see flaming rats running around. And it's like, wow. This is really just sort of like laying the table really for the insanity that is going to follow, because soon all the animals in the zoo are breaking out. So we're going to have lions and tigers on the loose. We're going to have a polar bear. There's a whole group of elephants that break out as well.
I was thinking about this when you were talking about it, and I was like, the laid back version of this movie would be Jumanji.
It's like, if you want to see the exploitation version of Jumanji, this is it. I had to say that when we get the elephants that have like probably some of the most inspired parts of the movies, because you think, it's going to be like the big cats are going to be like the big draw here, and watching people get mauled by that, which you obviously do. I love as well the fact that the security guards are all reading pornography rather than actually watching the monitors. They're too busy like reading porn and playing cards. It's like, guys, shouldn't you be like watching these masses of switches that you have, which apparently control something? These elephants that break out, and we get to see someone get strangled by an elephant's trunk. A car gets crushed. Someone gets their head stood on by an elephant, which is also was a big highlight. The director also managed to get his foot stood on by one of the elephants while he was shooting it. Which I have to wonder, how did you manage to get your foot stood on by an elephant? It's not like it's a small thing.
But the whole elephant thing was so crazy, because it was just like, you're watching this wall, and it's just like the elephant's breaking through it, and it's just like boom, 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 everything, and then you see the wall jut out slowly, and then I don't know, I think it was the security guard or something that was looking at it, and he was just staring at it, and I'm like, what did you expect to happen? Do you not know what lives behind those walls? Is that it? Like, is that how unfamiliar you are with your job? And then I was just looking at like, I don't know, obviously, because I don't live at the zoo. I'm watching this movie. So I'm kind of like, there's a big thing coming out. And then you have this idea that, well, whatever is so big and so tall that can be breaking out, it's either a giraffe or an elephant,
That'd be kind of cool to see a giraffe break out. Unfortunately, there is no giraffes in this. We just have because I think they spent all their money on elephants, so... I love as well the scene, these elephants, they run out into traffic, and there's a guy driving to it, and he's like, oh no, an elephant, and then he has like the most spectacular car crash, which seems...
I know.
I'm not sure if it was like footage they stole off some other film or stuff, but we see this like car launch into the air, into the chandelier store, and it's like, really, you see an elephant coming towards you, and your first instinct is to swerve off the road. In like the most dramatic fashion.
But see, that's the thing, is I think that Wild Beast does it really good, because at one point in that sense, like, we have a bit of that gore, and we have a bit of these goofy moments, which make it kind of funny.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was meant to be goofy, but I definitely thought it was goofy. And then it was just, but it kind of like, but at the same time, like, the story itself is also resolved, which was, those are some of the things I talked about in the previous creature features we covered, where we never really, like, a lot of the movies that we've seen so far, we never really get a resolution situation, especially like, you know, when we were talking about the earlier ones, right? It was always just like, oh, you know, this happened, and then you know, we got to live in a world with this type of thing. But I think, you know, when we look at the spectrum of this, they have such a balance of every little bit that's there, and it makes it. And this is kind of embracing that kind of creature feature thing where there's a little bit of gore, and well, this one is kind of intense. There's like a lot of gore, and then, but at the same time, there's a lot of variety in the action that's going on, because there's so much different, because all types of creatures are getting affected, and because it's the water supply, it's more than just the zoo itself supply. It's in general, right? And on top of that, it goes further into the whole thing where you really dive into this whole investigation of the whole thing. And they still, you know, there's still that like little bit of romance, and it's like, you know, it comes in and out, but it's not like a huge focus. It's kind of like a side story. But it also brings in, you know, the other character, which is the daughter, who is a little shit, to be honest. It's a brat. and she just becomes, you know, like, she's just, and then she's trapped inside her school. So there's so many different sides of the story that you're seeing, right? With Laura, who is a journalist, and she's stuck in the subway at one point, which has a pretty cool scene, I think, that goes on for the most part. And then you have that whole angle with her daughter, Susie. And then on the other side, you have the doctor, or Rupert Burner, is that it?
Yeah, Rupert.
And and he's kind of like, you know, he's kind of like I don't know what he is. He's like a zoo scientist or something like that. I don't know, animal scientist. I don't know what he is.
He basically works at the zoo. What he does there is pretty unclear, because he sort of like turns up looking like a bloody gigolo with his shirt half undone. Pretty much any excuse to either have his shirt half undone or to come out of the shower. And Delio seems to really grab it with both hands. But yeah, he's our go-to action guy in this one.
Yeah, and I think that because you have these three different sides, it gives the story a lot of, you know, traction. It doesn't really stay slow for a really long time, and you kind of wonder what's going on, right? Like, what animal are they going to see next? Because you don't know what's broken out. You just know that all the gates opened and then a bunch of animals escaped, but what really stayed and what really left is kind of like the big question mark.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really makes the most of the animals that they obviously had access to. So we see some really good stuff with like the big cats, as we mentioned already, especially the scene where they first break out and they're attacking the wardens, who all seem to get, funny enough, the wardens at the zoo all seem to get attacked by 3 different species of cat. It's not just like one group of cats that attack them. It's like they each get attacked by a different species, because we've got to maximize our animal carnage here. We also get to see a woman try to outdrive a leopard, which leads to the rather amusing scene of somehow she manages to get over 100 miles per hour on a city street, which is always kind of an achievement. Then we also get to see our hero trying to run over said leopard with his car, which there is no way that car is ever either of those cars is ever going to hit 100 for a start. Before she crashes into a car which apparently has been full of fuel, because it's we get a huge great big fireball there. So yeah, this film does 2 things really well. It does like animal trauma really well, and does car smash stunts really well.
And a lot of it is over the top, you know. Like,
oh yes.
And I think one of the main highlights, I think, that the point that I really wanted to talk about was like all those close-ups screaming. Oh, the close-ups of the screaming that was going on. Yeah. It was just wild, especially when it was in the dance school. And that was just, whew, it was like a whole new level. I was the close screaming, and they did that on the subway scene, I think, and then they did that in the dance school scene, I think. And it was so crazy. I was just watching this and I was like, I've never seen someone like exploit the the screaming so much. And it was just like the camera was like bouncing from one person to the next to the next to the next.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I really feel about that. I think that kind of deducted a little bit for me because I'm not really big on like a lot of over the top yelling sometimes. Which is probably why I'm not a fan of 80s movies. Slashers, I guess. Because there's a lot of that going on with Scream Queens and stuff.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm slowly trying to figure out, starting to figure out as I watch more of these things, like what really ticks me off. But no, that was really weird. I think that the point was made, but when you do it too much, it kind of loses the effect, and it turns into yet another like goofy moment, and you're just looking at it, you're like rolling your eyes, and you're like, okay, I get it, you're scared. That's fine. I understand. I'm scared too.
I think my favorite moment of this whole film is when the elephants break into the airport. Because for some reason I had in my head that the plane crashes into the elephants, but no, they run onto the airport and the plane manages to crash into the power plant for the city, which for some reason is built right next to the airport. No explainable reason why. Obviously knocking out all the power to the city and giving us that wonderful scene with the tiger on the subway. But this is what I love about this film. The plot is absolutely bonkers and the acting isn't the greatest, but the fact is just constantly throwing things at you've never seen before.
Yeah.
And the fact is, and there's the same, and equally, it's just completely bonkers. I think if you watch it with the intention of it being, that it's good, you're going to find it more amusing than like scary, or blown away with the dramatic acting. I think you can really have a lot of fun with this one.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is that when you look at a film like this, I feel like there's a difference between being disgusted and there's a difference between being disgusted and scared. And I have to say, like, I wasn't really scared with the movie. I was mostly disgusted with some of the scenes. And I think it just has to do with the fact that I've been kind of like distancing from horror for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I've been like lowering my horror film consumption aside from our creature features. So it's been, and maybe like some Korean stuff here and there. So it was really, it's been kind of like, maybe that's why I felt like it was, like I felt it was so disgusting. I don't know if it was meant like it was normal that I felt it was so disgusting.
Yeah, I would say it is pretty normal. I mean, a lot of these sort of movies, especially the Italian ones, they are pretty shocking in places, and some of the things that you get to see aren't like stuff that we're not used to obviously seeing as horror audiences, which is again what really sort of made them resonate with a lot of the horror fans, especially like the gore hounds who would watch like the Fulci movies, things like The Beyond, and see things they would never see in like the American cinema. I mean, The Beyond in particular, it opens with someone being crucified and then flailed and then have boiling hot clay poured over them. And that's the opening 5 minutes of the movie. And it's just like a real catalogue of just bizarre randomness from that point on. Yeah, so as we already mentioned, right, with the Italians, it's not like Hollywood, where things have got like health and safety. I mean, I'm not going to say it's as bad as like the Hong Kong system for health and safety. Which again is just a whole law unto itself. If you like look at some like, especially the 80s Hong Kong movies, and you see some of the insane work being done by the stuntmen in there, where they're doing like hard falls onto the ground. But with this film, because they're using real live animals, most of the scenes they would have like 3 animal handlers on set with like tranquilizer guns just ready to shoot these animals in case they got out of control. Antonio De Luio, he was actually a former animal trainer prior to becoming an actor, so he was given the lead role mainly because he was just so comfortable working with animals. Despite this, he did almost get decapitated by the polar bear. When it swung its paw at him, he narrowly missed his head. So despite his training, he did almost got decapitated by a polar bear. But the scene in the subway tunnel, which they shot in the early hours of the morning between like 1 and 3, the tiger managed to get loose. And they ended up finding it hiding in the bathroom before it then decided to get on top of the train. So they basically ended up having to shut down the whole of the subway station while they re-wrangled this tiger, which was at one point was trying to re-enter the station, which I'm sure is just the thing you need when you're on your morning commute, just to find a tiger on the loose.
Oh goodness.
But Italian filmmaking. But I mean, you mentioned already about the gore and stuff. But I think this is also why you watch exploitation cinema, to see things you're never going to see anywhere else, and that's normally the selling point of these movies, is the fact that they have something as a hook that will draw you in. And certainly with Wild Beasts, it's the fact is you're going to see animals going rogue, you're going to see a woman get her head stood on by an elephant, and you're going to see our lead actor almost get decapitated by a polar bear. Of course, if this wasn't enough, you mentioned already we've got the dance school, and of course the PCP has somehow got into the water supply, sending all the kids nuts for our really bizarre finale where the kids turn into a bunch of knife-wielding psychopaths. And then it ends. We get a little bit of text at the top to say, everything was all dandy, which I think I'm trying to think of like other films that did that, and I know Maximum Overdrive did it where it just basically said, yep, we got everything back under control again.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and it's just amusing when like they clearly either don't have enough money to finish the film, or they don't know how to end the movie, so they just like go, yep, the situation was all resolved. So you don't have to worry.
Yeah, because it was like they had this like kind of like a pretty intense type of ending, right? It was really, really crazy, and then basically all the main characters that you saw escaped, and then they were like, okay, we're good, we can end this now. At least everything in the zoo we've settled. We know all of them are fine, especially with a polar bear rolling around in the yard outside now. Waiting to be restrained and brought back to the zoo.
So, yeah, it's just like the authorities got the situation under control. And all of this is just like appearing over like the freeze frame of someone's screaming face. It's like, great, guys. It's not even like a fade to black. It's just like they're just running this text over like the last shot of the movie. And it's like, well, I feel reassured. Yeah, I've got nothing else to really say about this one, other than I really enjoy it. I think it's a really fun time, and like yourself, Kim, I think this is probably one of my favorites we've seen so far. I mean, obviously, I enjoyed the hell out of Alligator as well. So we're sort of now getting into like we're finding our groove with like what a creature feature movie is, because up until this point, it's been kind of a little abstract with like the birds. We've been on a B-movie slant with them, and we've had with whatever the hell was happening in Kingdom of the Spiders. So yeah, what about yourself, Kim?
No, I really like this one. I think that, I mean, I'm sure that I'm not going to be jumping into any other creature features from Italy, because I probably need to deep dive to look for more stuff. But I think it's a really nice change in pace, because it's a little bit closer to the creature features that I usually enjoy, where, there is a nice little, it's a little crazy, but it's a little ridiculous. It's a little over the top.
Yeah.
Or as you call it, bonkers. And, but these goofy things and the balance of like the goofy and the serious, gives it a good vibe to it. And, there's a lot of fun to be had with seeing all these different animals going around. And, if anything, it's actually made me want to go and continue watching or finish watching Zoo. Because I've only watched season 1 and I never finished it.
Oh, you did better than me. I watched the first 2 episodes. And I think I read in one of the synopsis they get attacked by jellyfish, and I kind of wanted to see that, so.
I don't know about that. I don't remember that happening yet. But no, if there was anything that I'd pair with this, it definitely would be Zoo. And I really enjoyed season 1 of Zoo, especially how they ended the season 1. Like, it really got you really wanting to watch season 2. So yeah, I mean, definitely a good time.
Nice.
I mean, just in terms of scope, this one's already so much bigger. So
it's true. It's it's interesting, obviously, as we go on, and filmmaking techniques move on, and certainly what directors had options available to them. Obviously, when we look at like Alligator, it's just a completely different movie to like The Birds, isn't it? Really, so. But this is, again, just something completely different all over again. And I think when we get onto our next movie, it's going to be something even more different again. So, but that brings us into tonight's episode. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to listen to us. Make sure you check out our blog, moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com. Where we've got our full archive of episodes. We've got all our previous seasons where we look at everything from Paul W.S. Anderson, Guillermo del Toro, Sofia Coppola, and Ang Lee, including our most recent season of Kick-Ass Female Directors, which was an absolute blast to record as well. We've also got our After Hours on there, and you can also find our Friday Film Club, where every Friday myself and Kim both pick a film to highlight, and sometimes it's a theme, sometimes it's not. Either way, it's a chance for us to talk about more of the movies that we love. You can also follow us on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Come and say hi to us there. Let us know what your favourite creature features are, and leave us a rating. Let us know in the comment section what you think of the show, as it all helps raise our profile. But Kim, what do we have coming up next?
We're moving ahead. We're going to 1990, and we're going to be watching Arachnophobia, which is classed as a horror comedy. So it should be a fun time, hopefully.
The movie which really gave me the EBGBs. But yes, we move on from giant crocodiles and a whole zoo of wild animals to, once again, going back to spiders with Arachnophobia, with a small town under siege by deadly tropical spiders. So that's going to be fun. But that's obviously coming up in our next episode, so make sure you join us for that. But until next time, thank you as always for listening. Thank you to my co-host Kim, and we'll be back to talk about Arachnophobia. Until then, good night.